and welcome to this session. This is a very, very big moment for us at the ECHO Network because what we're presenting you today is something we've been working on for almost 4 years. It's been a huge, huge effort by honestly thousands of people in the end, and we're really excited to present this to you not as a final product but actually as a work in progress. And we're very excited to present this at this wonderful RISE Summit, which we've been honored to be part of in the past as well, because we're really hoping for your input. We're hoping for your feedback and to see how you can also help us grow this idea, and also how you can take it on your own and expand it in your own ways. And that's a really important part of the process, because this isn't a completed model, it's actually an experiment, and it's something that we're trying out and learning on the way. So we're really happy to present this to you. And we have with us a really wonderful group of friends who have been with us from the very beginning of the work that we've been doing. They've helped us to grow it to where it is today, and they will continue with us as we move forward and try to expand this model not only across India, which is our focus of work right now, but across the world as well. And before I introduce our panelists for the day, I'd like to introduce the leadership team of the ECHO Network, who has been here working with me. They've been building this network. We've been doing this as a team, and this has actually been a huge joint effort, not only with all of the people that I've mentioned before, but particularly with this wonderful group of women. We are an all-women leadership team. I'm very proud and honored to be with them, and they have been my friends and my partners in crime for the past 4 years. So I'll just like to introduce you to them and have them say what they do in the ECHO Network. So let's start with Digangana.
Hi, I'm, like Shannon said, really excited to be here today because it's a great milestone for us to present what we are doing. I head communications at the ECHO Network, and in my role, in my capacity, I strive to bring science and sustainability to our daily lives. Thank you.
Tina?
Hi, I'm Tina, and I head engagement at the ECHO Network.
And Akshata.
Hello, everybody. I'm Akshata, and I'm working in the research pillar, and I head the research pillar here at the ECHO Network along with Shannon, Digangna, and Tina. And we do a lot of publishing papers, listening to people, experts, practitioners to get the latest research in the most easy way possible for our audience here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so everything that you'll see today and everything that you'll see going forward is due to this joint effort. Everything we do is collaborative, and that includes the leadership as well. So I am really greatly appreciative of these women, and also of the speakers that are with us, because they also have been wonderful leaders and mentors to us. So I'm going to introduce them now, and then a little bit later on, after I introduce the model so you understand what we're talking about, we'll have a little conversation among each other. But let me introduce you to who they are and give you a little bit of background. So we have with us today Jakob Williams-Orberg. He is the head of the Novo Nordisk Foundation's India branch office, and he leads the establishment of programs and its presence in India, including initiatives like the Partnership for Education of Health Professionals, which is with AIMS, and Christian Medical College, PHFI, and the World Bank, and actually lots of other organizations. He holds a PhD from the University of Aarhus in Denmark, and he was also part of Aarhus' co-founding of the Center for Higher Education Futures there. Before he joined NNF, he served as a Counselor of Science, Innovation, and Higher Education at the Royal Danish Embassy in New Delhi. And he's had several engagements on European university reform. He's worked a lot with issues in India as well, like the Indian technical education system, institutionalization of research integrity norms, and he's also participated in the Danish university legislation, including governance and property and campus reform. So I'll introduce you again to Jakob later in the session. We also have with us Nimish Shah. He is the General Manager of Regulatory Affairs in South Asia for Unilever, and he's a trained microbiologist and a safety and sustainability sciences practitioner, and he's got over 3 decades of experience in global health and sustainable innovations, and a very long track record in developing and contributing to lots of national and global regulations and standards with organizations like the Bureau of Indian Standards, the World Health Organization, Toilet Board Coalition, and lots of others, too many to name here. He previously served as the head of India's International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials. He also was the managing director at the Toilet Board Coalition and has served in other roles as well. And he currently actually plays several foundational roles for a lot of India's environmental sustainability and health and safety food issues in organizations like FICCI, where he's a continuing member, and also the Circular Economy Committee, and he's the chair of CII's Food Safety Committee, among lots of other things he does. We have Marcela de Souza. She is the director of the Watershed Organization Trust Center for Resilient Studies, and she's also the former executive director of Water in India. And the Center for Resilient Studies provides interdisciplinary evidence that links science to practice for programmatic design and policy advocacy. And as executive director, Marcela initiated the Climate Change Adaptation in Semi-Arid Regions program, which today follows the ecosystem-based adaptation approach to sustainable development. And this has also helped lead to the formation of the Collaborative for Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Resilient Incomes, which the ECHO Network is also part of. Marcela's expertise includes community-driven sustainable land and ecosystem management, water stewardship, climate-resilient agriculture, and locale-specific crop weather advisories and green livelihoods. Now, after this fantastic panel we have, I also hope that all of our listeners out there stay tuned after our panel sessions. I'll give you a little incentive not to sneak out halfway through this session, because beyond learning about our model and learning how you can adopt it for your own programs and your own issues, we have a special gift for all of you to give away. And that's going to be featuring Neha Dara, who is the business head of Rangla Sustain. She's actually the head of Rangla Sustain. I should be a little bit clear about that. And that's a treasure trove of stories on India's natural world. And she's been a travel writer and editor for most of her career, and she has a keen interest in sustainability and responsible tourism. At Sustain, the team works to inspire a sense of wonder in India's wildlife and habitats and support conservation and building a compassionate community. She has served as deputy director of the National Geographic Traveler magazine and several leading Indian media publications before that as well. And she was also responsible for promoting sustainable travel at Outlook magazine and also as a travel editor at Mid Lounge, among many, many other things that she does even today. So I want to thank Jakob, Nimish, Marcela, and Neha for joining the ECHO Network team to be here today to introduce our model and to talk about your own work and how your own work intersects with this idea of collaboration and working together across sectors. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll come back to you just after introducing to our audience what is this model we speak of and a little bit about it. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to actually share my screen and share a small presentation with you. So I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so this session is about this idea that we've coined the ECHO model, because it's really something that we've developed ourselves. And what it is based out of is our ECHO network. Okay, the ECHO network is actually a worldwide community now. We have over 2,300 members crossing 45 countries. The different colors of these dots actually represent different sectors of society, everything from NGOs, businesses, startups, government officials, academics, and service professionals who are all working together with us to build and execute this model. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, this is an experiment. We're trying and testing this out to see if we can actually get a global model for building knowledge-based societies, especially in emerging economies, which is why, as you can see, where the concentration of dots are the biggest, that's because we're starting in India. And that the idea is that this network is the platform on which we test our models. So the network is a group of people, but the group of people is what is actually executing the model. And it's really trying to address this issue. Now, I'm sure you've probably seen this term many times. It's quite a buzzword over the past couple of years. I think it was first used in Davos, maybe, and then it's been used many, many times since then. And maybe you don't like buzzwords, and I understand that, but this one I think is very appropriate because essentially the issues that we're dealing with, that all of you are dealing with your own organizations and companies, and maybe you're also representative of the government, so you're thinking about this and either making decisions or executing rules and laws based on these issues. There are a lot of issues we're dealing with at the same time, right? There's issues of everything from social issues like injustice and inequity and having refugees and pandemics. We're also dealing with environmental issues related to climate change, and lots of man-made issues like deforestation. And we're also dealing with other types of issues like technological ones, right? Like cyber threats and energy vulnerability and all sorts of things. And these all are affecting each other. They're all sort of exacerbating each other. And you can't really just address one problem anymore because you're not even going to be able to address inequity without thinking about issues of climate change and issues of technology and the digital divide, for example. And that's really, really hard for us to do because we're just one person, one organization, one group of people. And it actually requires us to work on all of these issues simultaneously, which is truly impossible for an individual to do. And that is the basis of the idea behind the ECHO model, which is this idea that the current polycrisis offers the opportunity to address our planet's greatest societal challenges by establishing a model for knowledge-based societies based through collaboration. So the fundamental aspects of the model are creating knowledge-based societies, building knowledge into all aspects of the society, and working together to do it. So it's knowledge and collaboration brought together. And then to address these large systemic problems that have many, many facets: inequity, climate change, digital divide, etc. All rolled into one, right? That no individual can address. And with this, we also are cognizant that there's really three hurdles that we have to overcome to really make this sort of idea, this sort of models effective. The first is that we have to address the issues of skill. We are trained, I'm assuming that everyone is listening to this has gone through some level of schooling, right? Even if it's just, you're just going through high school at the moment, or you've just completed high school, or that's all you had, you still had high school, and you were taught math and science and history, and you were taught all these subjects. And if we go on to further education, it's even more disciplinary, right? You become an economist or a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. And in my world, in science, it's even worse, right? I am not just a scientist, I'm actually a chemical ecologist, which is a very specific aspect of biology, which is itself a specific aspect of science. So we are parsing our knowledge into ever smaller chunks because the knowledge itself in each of these areas is becoming greater and greater. And I can't learn all of science. I can't even learn all of chemical ecology, right? I'm still learning it. And that's a big issue because that means that we don't have the skills to think about polycrisis. I can't think about economics. I'm not even trained in economics. If you see my bank account, you'd understand that I'm not trained in economics, right? And so we also don't have the exploration of this broader sort of thinking that addresses on-ground needs, and that makes it harder to support this kind of work, right? We support exploration in medicine or exploration in economics or exploration in engineering. So we don't support polycrisis sort of experimentation. So it's harder to support that financially, it's harder to do it, and it's harder to publish and get it out there into the world. And also, on top of that, the public itself, their access to knowledge is closely linked to socioeconomic status, right? We all know that the people who need to access the knowledge about sustainability the most are the people with the least access to that knowledge, because it's largely done in English, like I'm speaking right now, and most of our world doesn't speak English. Most of India doesn't speak English on a regular basis, right? And so we have to create the skills and the ability to transmit this knowledge in an effective manner. We also have a problem of scope, right? We are split not only into disciplines in education, but we're also split up into sectors, right? We are business, we are government, we are NGOs, we are service sector, we are, also working in different aspects of those sectors as well. And we each have our own language, we each have our own values and needs, and we don't really talk much to each other because it's very difficult as an individual to absorb all of those perspectives, because we don't even have the language I don't have the language of a businessman, right? Nimish would tell me in my many conversations we've had with Unilever, I don't know all of the corporate lingo that's needed as a scientist to be able to talk across the line, and that can make it very difficult to have a conversation. And even more difficult is that we don't develop our listening skills properly. We don't listen to each other on a regular basis. We're not taught to listen to each other, and we're not enforced to listen to each other. And listening is an incredibly underserved skill in the human population today, which is needed to actually create the scope that we need to solve these problems. And finally, of course, this is a scale, right? I mentioned the digital divide earlier, and that really does limit our ability to adopt technology widely. And also, we have really strong equity issues, and that limits the ability of knowledge to be accessible to the people who really need it urgently and can use it right away. We also have strong language barriers. If any of you are listening here from India, that goes without saying. We know that's a problem here in India, but it's also a problem across the world as well. All of these things, skill, scope, and scale, are big hurdles that we have to overcome if we're going to create some sort of collaborative strategy for knowledge-based societies. So that's what this model that we've established is intending to do. And it's trying to do it through a method called communities of practice. Communities of practice are basically just groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something, and they learn how to do it better by interacting regularly with each other. Everybody listening to me has been part of a community of practice at one point if you have actually worked with some people to clean up your local park, or to fix up a building, or to do something with a local society. That's a community of practice, right? The only difference is the scale at which we're trying to do this. We're trying to build a community of practice on a global scale, right? So we're trying to do this not just in one community for one park, but in many communities, in many parks, in many areas across the world, right? But applying the same principle of deciding on a topic, deciding what to work on, and working on it and learning from each other and getting better at it as we go along, and learning from our mistakes as opportunities to grow and to expand the knowledge, right? That's what a community of practice is. Now, that's why we're doing it, and what we're doing is building a community of practice. Now, the next step is, how is this model being executed? And it's being executed through something that is very familiar to you. Even if you're not a scientist, you would have learned this at some point in school. This is the scientific method, right? It's something that we all learned at some point in school, right? What does a scientist do? They first observe things. They make notes about it, about their observations. Then they create a plan about what they think they see and what they think they need to do. And then they create a question, a hypothesis. I think this might be happening. And then they test it, and they analyze it, and then they implement whatever they find. That's essentially the scientific process: observe, plan, hypothesize, experiment, analyze, and implement. And we are applying this to the communities of practice concept in order to execute this model. So we're just replacing the scientific method in terms of scientific tools and terminologies, right? We're not looking through a telescope or a microscope or binoculars. We are looking through communities and companies and governments across the world. So our labs are living rooms, and our microscopes are social innovation tools. Okay, so that's the main difference. But the method that we use, the how, is really the scientific method. So let's start with where the scientific method starts. So how do we observe in order to create this model? Well, the most important thing is you need to start by listening. When we do awareness exercises, when we bring awareness, we usually think about raising awareness in our communities. They don't know about this issue. We need to bring awareness to them so that they now know about it. And that's true. We often need to do this, but we equally need to be able to find out what is it that they need regarding this issue. Sure, maybe they don't know much about biodiversity, but maybe they also have needs regarding biodiversity that we should listen to, which is why bidirectional awareness is essential. We've listened to over 118,000 people to create this model with over 190 activities, and we are still need to listen every single day. So this is not a thing that starts at the beginning, but it's actually a constant process, okay? So it's not something that happens just once, but it's something you repeatedly do throughout this model to make sure that you are understanding what the community needs, because it changes over time, right? The needs change, society changes, things happen, pandemics happen, and we need to adjust to that. And by listening to that, you can then get a sense of what are the topics you really need to focus on. Our topics, which are these 4 topics of health, agriculture, ecosystems, and bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy, all come from listening to what the community has told us they need and using various analytical tools to be able to create our program based upon what the community has told us that is important to them and what they need to do in order to be more sustainable. So that's where it's so important to start with observation and to be able to create targeted community needs, to identify those so that your community of practice is addressing the needs of the community itself. So once you've observed it and you've identified some of these needs, then you need to come up with a plan. That's the next step in the scientific process. So when you plan, you need to plan by creating shared values so that people work together. And this is where you really need to work on listening. You really need to work with your group of people, whoever that is, your organization, your community, your country, your world, depending on the scale that you want to do this, and work on listening to each other. Understanding what is it that everyone's thinking about these issues, and build trust with them. Build a sense of trust, because that actually comes from being able to listen to each other, understanding each other's issues, even if you don't agree with them. But that's where trust comes from. And once you have that trust, you can then identify common values. I don't mean values like, belief systems necessarily, but values like, what do you think is important here? What do you think needs to happen in health or agriculture? And then that can create groups of people who share the same values with each other. And we've utilized this strategy. Also, we're working with several other organizations who are also creating these same sorts of plans. And that has given us platforms of individual consortia in agriculture, health, and other areas that we can work with to execute this model. So, and we utilize a lot of social innovation techniques, many of which you might be familiar with, such as the theory of change you probably often use in your organizations, but also things like value mapping and evidence planning, which can help you identify what those shared values are. This is a really important step to make sure that you can create that community that you need in order to create the community of practice. Once you have these shared goals, these shared values, then you need to plan, okay, well, what are you going to do? What is it actually, what is your aim of the work? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to clean up a lake, okay? Are you trying to test out a particular innovation? That's where you have to hypothesize, right? A hypothesize is coming up with a topic, an idea that you want to test, right? And that needs to also be based on current efforts. I cannot emphasize this enough, that you need to have lots and lots of discussions with people who are already working on these issues, and you need to find out what is happening on the ground right now and how are you going to build from that, not replace it, not repeat certainly what people are doing, but build on that with new knowledge, new innovation that takes what they're already doing and makes it stronger, right? And that's where these cross-sectoral discussions are important, because you simply can't know what's going on everywhere. I can tell you, we are based in Bangalore in India, and even in Bangalore, there's so many organizations, so many people doing things. It's even hard for people in the city to know what each other are doing, much less what's happening across the entire massive country of India, much less the world, right? So we've had over 650 participants in our workshops over the past 4 years, and that's helped us to understand what is happening in different areas. How can we build from that? How can we harness that and actually to execute some of these goals a little bit more effectively? Once you have your hypothesis, well, then the next step, of course, is to actually start your experiments. Start trying to create that knowledge, right? And I don't mean necessarily actual experiments. Maybe it does require experiments, and in the truest sense, maybe it's a scientific issue. But what you need to do really is assess the knowledge gaps. And the way we do this is by nurturing new leaders. Because I mentioned at the beginning that we do have a limitation of skill. We simply do not have in our education systems enough training of this broad sort of thinking. There are programs, great ones across the world, and in India as well, and across many countries, like in Denmark, where our international hub is held, who are doing some great work on this. But still, largely, our leaders are not exposed to what's happening on the ground in communities until they start working in organizations. And we need to give them some sense of, how do you work with a businessman and a lawyer and a farmer at the same time? How do you actually talk a language that all of them can understand and also work with all of them simultaneously? So that's what we're actually doing to actually assess the knowledge gaps. We assess the knowledge gaps through these new leaders. These are students, and the students are actually doing the work, the research, the academic knowledge creation that academics do in order to assess the knowledge gaps that have been hypothesized. And we also do this by creating consortia. So we have groups of people who are all agree that this needs to be done. They all have a passion to try to accomplish it. And we have these consortia that work with several levels of students. And each level of student has a different job. Our undergraduates actually work across our communities. Our master's students work across our knowledge gaps in terms of like what is currently existing out there. They do preliminary research, they do background research, they do stakeholder interviews to try to understand the space that constantly has to be repeated because things change every year, every month sometimes. And then we have PhD fellows who are much longer term learners who actually work on these longer term deep projects with the communities themselves to test out a new agricultural platform, a new type of public health strategy, depending on what the issue actually is. So by using these different levels of students, we create these consortia that can work together and repeat the process and keep building that knowledge again and again over time, where we have new master students every year with new information coming in. And that way, we actually can build this model going forward. Which, of course, leads us to the most important thing. The reason why you're all listening to me right now is because really, you don't really care about this model. What you care about is actually hopefully creating better sustainable development. You want to implement solutions in communities that actually work, that help them become more resilient, help them deal with climate change, help them to become more equitable across different aspects of society. All of these things are necessary. Help improve education, whatever it is, that's what you care about. Right? So the implementation is really the proof in the pudding. And that has to go through constant co-creation with communities, constantly going back and observing them and listening to them and hearing what their needs are, constantly understanding how are these new efforts coming up and changing, and also improving your strategy, sometimes starting over sometimes. And all of that is part of the process. So that's really what a community practice is. It's a constantly evolving effort. And by bringing in these new leaders in our model, we are trying to create a strategy that's sustainable beyond us. These leaders will take our ideas, take this theory, take this idea of working together beyond us into their own jobs, into their own situations across the world, where they will build their own communities of practice. And that you also have to be prepared of. You have to be prepared to give this away. This is not something that can keep with you. You have to be prepared that these ideas are not going to stay with you. We've had 8 initiatives merge from just these kind of discussions we've had, and that's great. Those initiatives have become their own initiatives, and they've taken off in their own way. And so you have to remember that it's not going to stay yours. It's something that gets created, that gets given away, and gets utilized by others. And that's really also a very key feature of the community of practice. So it has benefits to everyone. It benefits academics. They get trained. Communities get the solutions, right? Organizations learn the knowledge that they need to do their jobs better. Companies get new consumers, right? And also even governments can understand how to make better decisions because they get connections with all of these different aspects of society. And this is what keeps the communities going because they have a reason to be there. They see the value in being there. And it's constantly being reconnected over and over again because it's a constant reevaluation process. So you build that trust and you create that value, and then your beneficiaries will take the responsibility to carry this model on beyond you. And this is very important in allowing it to keep going. So I just want to end this part of the session by saying that, our plan basically is to create this community, to strategize it over the next 5 years. We're doing this in India and trying to do this across India. And as I've always said, and any of you who work in India know, I think you'd agree, if you can get something to work in a country like India that's so diverse, so big, so multicultural, and so much different types of knowledge and expertise in it, then you really probably can get it to work anywhere. And that's our theory too. And we're going to take that then to the world and other emerging economies, particularly in the global south, in the next 5 years after that. And then we hope that it starts to take on a life of its own, right? If we've been developing this and people have been taking it on their own, that it will just be, I hope, the way people work. People collaborate better. People listen to each other. People learn to trust each other a little bit more. I know it sounds dreamy and a little Pollyannish maybe, but it's something that we really believe in is absolutely important to foster if we're really going to achieve sustainable development at scale, which is what we want. So I hope you'll join us. I hope you're excited by this model. I hope you give us feedback on, some things we can do to improve, of course, and also some things maybe you agree with as well. And now I'm going to stop my presentation and turn it over to our panelists who are now going to talk with us about this aspect in their own lives, in the own work that they're doing. And I introduced them at the beginning, but I'm just going to introduce them again so that you have them all here. We have Jakob Williams-Orberg. Maybe Jakob, you can unmute yourself also so I know you can hear me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Jakob. Thank you for joining us today. We also have Nimish Shah.
Hi, pleased to be here.
And Marcela D'Souza here as well. And then Neha will be joining you in a little bit because you're part of the surprise and the gift, right? So you're the present actually at the end. All right. So I'd just like to start this discussion. You all have been such huge friends to us. You've been advisors. We have listened to you throughout the past 4 years. You've given us a lot of information and feedback. And I'd really like to hear from your own perspectives. What do you feel are some of the biggest sustainability challenges that we're facing today? I listed a bunch of them in that poly crisis slide, but what are the ones you are most concerned about? And how do you feel efforts like this sort of collaborative model I discussed could be helpful to address them? Maybe I'll start with Jakob here.
Thank you, Sean. There's an echo. Okay. Now it's gone. So I represent something called the Novo Nordisk Foundation, and we are of. Maybe start with one of the others. I'll fix my technical issue.
No problem. We'll go on. Maybe Marcella, if you'd like to speak about what challenges you think we're facing that maybe collaboration could help with. You're muted, Marcella.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent here a large group of communities, practitioners, all those who are there out really at the edge of society and who are faced with a complex situation. On the one hand, I represent the communities in rural areas, and there's large sections of society belong to this area, who are faced with the challenge of survival. Many of them, we have 51% of our population in India that belong to the farming community, who are faced with the challenge of varying weather conditions, serious weather conditions on the one hand. On the other hand, the ecology in which each group lives is very distinct. And then we have the external factors like the markets, the demands that come in over there, and the whole cost of survival. Basically, they're facing survival. And what we all face over here is, how do we get solutions to the problems we face yesterday? We need our solutions yesterday. There's very little time that we have to work with the changing scenarios that are so rapid. And that's where I see, a collaborative like this, which brings in a lot of knowledge from the different perspectives, where one can identify with where do we get, who has a solution, what kind of a solution, what can be tested, be a solution coming from a need. On the other hand, a solution coming from what do I need to do to restore this geography in which I am in? How do we manage water on the other hand? How do we look at productivity to enhance productivity so that incomes come in? And then you come to another sector, which how do we feed? How do we come to the food systems that support us? And here is where I see a large group that the Eco Network has brought in, a large group of partners. I would say partners, each one coming from an area of a different strength. And where we can communicate, share, each one has a lot to share, where one can pull in the strengths of another. And I think this is very important in today's world. I also represent, and coming from the same issue of needs, we have started what is called the ecosystem-based approach for resilient incomes, a collaborative. We are looking at how do we restore the natural ecosystems, which are so varied. You have the coastal, you have the terrestrial. Within the terrestrial, you have distinct ecosystems. Each needs to be restored according to its nature. And we need to flow with nature. But we don't have all the answers. And that's the reason why we started this collaborative, which Eco Network brings in a lot of strengths for us. We also form a base for the Eco Network group, for the students, where they can come and learn what does it mean to get a meaningful career in life. I'm saying meaningful because it's not just getting a job, it's also finding a passion in making an impact where it really matters. So this is what I'd like to say for this moment.
It's very beautifully said, Marcella, and you're such a good example also of the humility that I think that really makes this whole thing work is being so open as you are to bringing in other ideas and also sharing your own knowledge. So it's a really wonderful thing, and it's also why our students are so fortunate to be able to work with water on this work. So thank you so much. Nimish, how about you? Oh, you're muted, Nimish. Sorry.
Yeah. So pleased to be here and wanted to share how Eco Network is really helping the world. I mean, with focus on India to drive action on some of the challenges. And your question was, Shannon, that what do I see as key challenges that we are facing? And you started with the polycrisis, so there are several of those. So, and those are all really, really very high impact, of affecting life, nature, etc. But the one challenge I often see amidst this thing is this kind of a chaotic world in which everyone tries to bring in a very narrow perspective to address a challenge. Yeah. So how to address a challenge itself is a challenge in my view. Yeah. And I have, in my personal experience over the last 10 years, often seen that when you're trying to address water, you increase your climate impact or increase your pollution impact. When you're trying to reduce greenhouse gas, you're kind of uh, not helping communities, for example. Yeah. So the kind of interdependencies, the kind of A affects B and B affects C, therefore A affects C, is lost somewhere, and regulators, governments, policymakers, and even think tanks kind of create a sort of an operating zone and work within that, little understanding the whole interdependencies about it. And that I see is a challenge, because we are not solving problems without creating new ones. We are actually trying to solve a problem and create a new one there. Yeah. And in that respect, I feel there is a role for a network like Eco Network, which brings in people from diverse walks of life. And right from the time we started 3-4 years ago, when we started writing some of these papers in the height of COVID times, we recognized the value of bringing people together from diverse walks of life. And I'm aware that not all the members of your network are scientists. Many of them are actually social scientists, right? And this kind of a bridge between social scientists and real so-called lab scientist, or for that matter ecological scientist, or for that matter environment scientist, or chemical engineers, mathematicians, is really, really essential to look at problems from an holistic point of view. And therefore I think a role that Eco Network should play, and maybe even strengthen and build further from here, is the fact, how do we make this interdisciplinary resource to drive solutions to problems in that interdisciplinary manner. And that would be, so-called a kind of a, you can make a vision or a mission statement out of this kind of a framing. But that's what I think would be something that I have on my mind as far as Eco Network is concerned.
And I think the other point you brought up, Nimish, that was really important. You were with us at the very beginning. The very first thing we did was get this group of 10 really amazing people together in the first wave of the pandemic, when nobody knew what was going on, and actually talk about what was going to happen after it was over, right? Which is pretty I don't know, brave, I think, at the time, because we didn't know it was going to last for another two or almost 3 years, right? But that experience was such a learning experience, right? And that that really highlights, I think, also what's really important, and something that we've learned from you and from others, is that, you know, each thing that you do is itself a way to evaluate and learn and grow, and what worked here, what didn't work, what can we build on towards this larger vision statement, as you mentioned, of how do we actually create this sort of interdisciplinary exchange on a broader level. And I think it's an evolving process. I don't think it's something that we can decide today and then this is set in stone. The model is itself something that's evolving over time. So yeah, so thanks so much for this. Jakob, I hope your technical difficulties have been alleviated.
Thank you. Apparently I had logged on many times in my attempt at being a good participant. Thank you so much for having me in this meeting. I represent something called the Novo Nordisk Foundation, which is a Danish foundation that supports science and science-based translational work within the area of human health and planetary health. So we put it very broadly. And we've been traditionally a very national and Scandinavian oriented foundation, where I think we have, as Shannon had put it, been a very active member of several communities of practice. Now we have decided that that is not enough. We want to be a globally engaged foundation, because we find that the challenges that we try to address are connected not only to each other, but also connected through several different sites across the globe. And we want to follow the challenges into those sites and also be part of addressing them. Now, how do we engage, for example, with India, which is the country that we are very much focusing on right now in trying to go global? How do we engage with India when we are not part of that community of practice that the challenges are belonging in? And I think that's why that question have led us to engage with EcoNetwork and EcoNetwork's partners. So through something called the Danish Academy of Technical Sciences, we have now been with the EcoNetwork for I think 3 years. And what the Danish Academy of Technical Sciences is a congregation of active ingredients in our world on the Danish side. And what we are hoping to see is that the people from there, and all our universities are there, most of our industries in the relevant areas are there, that the people from there can form networks and really engage with the communities of practice on the Indian side that owns the challenges in the Indian context that we would like to engage in. And through those engagements, I am of the hope that the scientists and the students that they bring with them are learning and maybe also are positioned to bring some of the problems, the solutions, the engagements up to us and come back with projects that can shape our engagement with India. So, of course, as a foundation, we are very project-based, and that means that we are suffering from all the problems that have been mentioned of being focusing on whatever goes on in that project. So I very much see the EcoNetwork and initiatives like the EcoNetwork, and I see the EcoNetwork as one probably in a family of global attempts at doing this. So I think that movement that Shannon is talking about might already be assembling itself. So I think we see EcoNetwork as an experiment that allows us to maybe shift from a technology-centric into a more community-based understanding of the world that we are engaging in. And we are very much here to learn. And we have been a supporting member, but the active members are, of course, the scientists and the industrial technology people, the communities that own the issues that we want to engage in. But yeah, communities of practice, I think, is the way to organize problems if we want to understand not just our part of those problems, but also how we collectively can move those problems into a new, hopefully better situation. So thank you.
Jakob, I appreciate you mentioning that, that the ECHO network, the network is just what we have, but the idea, the model behind it, you're right. It's actually not something that it's only us doing it. There's, it's maybe we're doing it in our own way, and that's unique, but there's collaborative efforts happening all across the world. And that's actually a very important part of this as well, is seeing it not as a competitive process, right? Like, oh, we are doing this, and this is our strategy, and this is the best way to do it. But saying, look at all these efforts that are going on. How can we actually collaborate? How can we work together? And that's why we started as a network. That's why we're functioning through a network, is that so that hopefully we can actually interface with these other programs and grow through our international partnerships to these other programs across the world and learn from them and make our strategies better by working with them and not, competing against them as a better version or, a different version, right? So I think this is really important. And I also appreciate you bringing up the international aspects of our network, because from the beginning we saw that even though we had chosen for lots of very important reasons, like I mentioned, to focus on India, it's also where I've been focused my science for many years. We realized that we needed to have international partnerships in order for this to work, not only because there's knowledge outside of India, but also because the knowledge that we're creating and we have already created in India also is valuable to people around the world in ways that I don't think are always recognized because of this barrier that we have. So I wanted to come back to you for this question, because I think it's really important. Most of when I gave my little spiel about the model, I really didn't talk about the idea of international collaboration and international partnerships. And I think we often shy away from these when we're dealing with community level problems, because we think that, how can, and to some extent it's true. If you are coming from, I don't know, Denmark, let's say Denmark, because that's what we're talking about right now, it could be very hard to understand what a farming community that Marcella works with at Water is going through, because your situation is so different. You don't have the same land ecosystem, you don't have the same financial systems, the language, the culture, everything is different. But yet, there is a very great need for international collaboration, because the knowledge that can be gained can be very valuable. So I wanted to ask you also, both from the perspective of Novo Nordisk, but also from the perspective of the relationship with Denmark and India that we're trying to grow through the network, how do you see these international collaborations being benefited each way through this collaboration, and also leading to a greater way of solving these problems on the ground, which they're not often considered from an international perspective?
I think that was a question back to me directly, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So thank you. I think that we operate from an ambition of global impact. But what does that mean? Because all the articulation of the challenges that we are talking about, first of all, they are internally connected. So we are looking into food security, but we're doing it at the same time as we are having ambitions for being impactful in the area of climate. And then, of course, the third very interlinked problem that we care about here is health, through the nutrition, but also through the climate-based health challenges that are arising all around. Now, we can work with the Danish universities and support programs in those areas. and we are doing that, and I hope that they think that we are a good partner for them in that. But we can also partner with them in seeking a global engagement for their students and for their scientists. If we are to do that without engaging in what I think a founding member of this network, Professor Vijayaraghavan, has termed as helicopter science or parachuting science into destinations, I think he has mentioned, then I think we need to connect with both the scientific communities of other geographies to, together with those communities, understand and gain new perspectives of the problems that we want to address. Hopefully, in that process, those scientists that we're working with, or those organizations that we're working with there, will also themselves gain new perspectives and new ways of working on their problems. So basically, we are not interested in our scientific engagement only being present in the Danish universities and trying to make themselves impactful through Danish communities and Danish companies. There's an internal scientific need, a scientific drive for the global, but there is also a connectedness in the problems that we are addressing that makes it imperative for us to go global. And then when we go global, I think we have to do it or support our efforts through doing it in a community-based manner as well. I really like an aspect of the Eco Network that might not be so top of our mind because we are mostly looking at science, and that's the connection between the students. And the connection between students, but also the connection between students and various communities, both of young people, but also of people with lifelong experiences within the problems that students think that they can master through a program. I think each of those people who graduate from such engagements that, for example, the Eco Network hosted over the summer last year, will probably be shaped for life by that, and begin to see their own life as one that has to engage in problems that has owners and many other stakeholders with each their perspective, and that are not theirs to solve, but are theirs to collectively engage in. So there's a little, I think, the benefit that we get in globalizing through these types of activities are very much a reshaping of.
Oh, you muted yourself, Jakob.
Okay, but that was just a sign of then, yeah, that I had to stop. Thank you.
No, thank you for mentioning our students, because they are really one of the key mechanisms for us to develop our knowledge, right? To build knowledge-based societies, we need creators of knowledge, and that really comes from academia, from students are our vehicles. And at the same time, as you said, our hope is to instill them with this idea of how to collaborate, how to work together, how to think beyond your own training, and how you can work with others who maybe have a completely different background from you. And that also not only creates the ability to work interdisciplinary, as Nimish had mentioned, but also to work across cultures and across countries as well, which is always important, since these issues, while they may be affecting India, are not just affecting India. A lot of our issues are global issues that are being realized in different ways all over the world. So I really appreciate what you said there. And since we were actually talking about communities as well, and connecting directly on the ground with communities, Marcella, I wanted to ask you, how do you see this need for collaboration? You mentioned a little bit in the introduction about how, what the needs of the people that you work with on the ground, right? Because you actually work directly on the ground with different rural communities across the country, actually, not, but you're also based in Maharashtra, and you work with a lot of communities just in your local area. So how do you see, this idea of collaboration really helping them to become more sustainable? How can we build their sustainable development through these strategies?
So what I hear your question to me is, how do we help the communities look at sustainability? Am I right? And working at the collaborations for this perspective. I think I'll go back to a statement that Nimish had mentioned earlier, is that we are so interconnected. Even within the rural communities, everything is so interconnected. And talking about it, even in the global picture, if we look at the interconnectedness of what we all are facing in different types of the climatic events and the climatic risks we are all facing, and the type of geographies that are all being affected. I don't think there's any geography that is kept safe just now. We have floods, we have droughts, we have landslides, we have fires, you have all sorts of things. And this is where we look at, within the community, the whole approach of how to, the moment we go into a holistic approach and a systemic approach, looking at the interconnectedness of the different, to find a response for a community, we need to look at the interconnectedness. As Nimish said earlier, we go to solve one problem. For instance, just as an example, if we try to solve the problem of agriculture in exclusivity, tomorrow we'll have the problem of excessive loss of water. And then we'll have to go back to start up. How do we look at saving the water because we are not getting the food anymore? And then what do we do with, trying out newer technologies to get more food? And the whole vicious cycle of degradation and losses is seen. And this is where we look at seeing how do we, the need for a systemic approach and a more holistic approach at the onset. Anticipating what we would say, what are the interconnectedness? If a community in one geography in an upstream, which is quite far away, the upstream farmers are quite far away from the river, from the farmers in the river, maybe in the third or fourth order stream. No visual connect, and yet very intensely connected. How do we need to bring this holistic approach? We need to look at the social science, but also the technical, the geological, the climatic. And this is where we need to look at science coming in and immersing itself within the communities and with communities to look at this interconnectedness. And then when we look at, yes, how do we look at food security? Which is so, and this is where we need a lot more of agencies to come in, institutes to come in, different players to come in, because food security is not, you cannot have food secured with just a few types of grains. You need to look at the whole system and reach food security all across. That's where we need to bring in the blend of reaching out to areas where it doesn't have, how does it have, and this is a complex issue. And at the same time, looking at how do we reduce on our emissions? How do we look at enhancing sequestration? How do we look at adaptation, contributing to mitigation, which it does? How do we bring in different types of experts who've got expertise, across in international institutions? The science that is learned in international institutions can contribute to what's happening even in a local area in remote, let me say Maharashtra or Jharkhand or the 10 states where we are working. But at the same time, that science needs to start viewing it from the farmers, from the farming community perspective. And this is how I look at the learning that all of us are doing simultaneously. I would say it can be a very enjoyable learning when we keep discovering from what we are learning out all across. And this is where what we can do only in a partnership. And this is how I see the communities, really invigorating all of us, because that is where we can actually see the achievement, the transformation in the future, and sustainable transformation for future.
So, Marcella, I also really appreciate you talk about the issues of sustainable development, right? Because as Nimish mentioned before, a lot of our innovations are very specific to dealing with water conservation or dealing with soil chemistry. And then, of course, by over applying them or applying them in isolation, you actually exacerbate other problems like topsoil or biodiversity loss. But you also bring up another issue, which is actually that it's not just sustainability, it's also sustainable development. And development is really important, right? And that actually requires us to bring in companies, bring in businesses, bring in startups, bring in corporates who actually can also help with that kind of substantial infrastructural development. So that's why I come to you, Nimish, is how do you see corporates and industries actually benefiting from this process and working across these different levels? I mean, you're also a scientist. You mentioned the scientific aspects in your previous answer. But also, how do you see this going beyond also to helping, corporations, not only with their bottom line, but helping in kind of a national level development, or even maybe at the international level? You're muted again.
As I was saying, corporates are also institutions, yeah, and they are good at something. They excel at few things, but they may not have an understanding of everything, yeah. And given the issues around sustainability, there are two parts to it. One is the science is very new, so there is like the understanding, appreciation. If it was about let's say constructing a building, you will get a set of architects and engineers and they will construct it. But when you are talking about, say, achieving net zero, you need to address it from several different angles, and not necessarily everything is known or defined or for which standards are set. So we are operating in a sort of a new area, and there are uncertainties about it, yeah. So that is part one. And secondly, the previous point, which is about those interdependencies. Now, corporates are not necessarily good at it. And even if you think about, ESG reporting and all that, every year there is a refinement on ESG reporting. Last year, those parameters were not there. Some new parameters have come, old ones have gone out. So it's a bit of an evolving field. And this is a point I have also been making outside, is that it will take another few years to kind of have a proper framework for corporates as well to do their sustainability analysis and then reporting. In that context, I think Eco Network has a good role to play in terms of overall, I would say, skill building, expertise building, etc. And this is something I also was quite looking at when I attended your Bangalore event. This was something about capacity development that we spoke about. Yeah. So I definitely think that's an opportunity corporates wise. I also wanted, because I'm going to leave in another couple of minutes, I also wanted to touch upon one additional point beyond corporates, which is about the value of an experiment like Eco Network. And I fundamentally believe that it is in the sustainability is ingrained in Indian genes. Yeah. Overall, since decades, sustainable thinking is how we are all wired. Yeah. Now, that has not scaled up in a manner it has scaled up in countries like, say, the Nordics and all this stuff. And Jakob is here, and I would like to acknowledge that, the thought leadership the Nordics have driven on this. But now, if you look at Indian talent, we are producing, 1.5 million engineers per year and about 300,000 STEM graduates per year, and then so many equivalent amounts in the social sciences and all the stuff. Yeah, so it is going to be the hotbed of talent for the future. The demographics are also young, and therefore there will be knowledge, insights, value driven from India to outside world, and India will be much more open today as compared to before on accepting innovations and ideas from outside. So it is India for the world and the world for the India, and you are in that juncture where you are in that sweet spot. And therefore, I do think that an experiment like Eco Network has the best chance of success because of the context in which we are speaking. So all the best to you and your team, and would love to be associated with you in future.
Well, you have been with us from the beginning, Nimish, so you can't back out now, right?
Of course not. Yeah.
So, since you mentioned that you have to leave in a few minutes, I wanted to just also mention to our audience that if you have any questions, there's this little Q&A panel on the right side where you can ask your question, and if I can't figure that out, you can also put it in the general chat, because I'll be opening it up to the panelists to answer your questions in a couple of minutes if you have any. And I do want to turn this one last question to you, Nimish, back to our audience, because I think that the people who are listening to this, right, I think it's great to hear about the Eco Network, and I would love, I hope that everybody listening joins the Eco Network, because it's free and open, and we can only improve by hearing from more voices. But also, people also have their own collaborative journeys, right? In their own organizations, they want to learn how to collaborate better. They want to learn how to maybe become more international, or bring in other voices, or bring in scientists if they're coming from a social sort of organization, or bring in economics information. So what advice would you give, to our audience, to help them on their journey? Maybe something that they can start doing to improve their collaboration in their organization, or even personally. How can they do better at collaborating? What would you tell them where they can start? Because I think there's so many things we talked about today, so many skills we talked about, so many aspects. So where would you tell them to start?
I don't know what advice I can give, but at least the mindset I adopt is the fact that sustainability is a non-competitive world, at least so far, I think, where everyone is quite open to helping each other. It is not something like, let's say, an IT or a code development where the person who is developing the code is really worried somebody can steal my code. Yeah? But that's not the case with sustainability, because here we are all together for a greater good. And I think that is the mindset that should come first, okay, that we are all in this together for greater good. If somebody else other than me wins, it is for greater good in any case. Yeah. So I think that's the mindset with which one has to go. And I think the second thing is really, be appreciative of the bigger challenges and issues we have, because when we know that, we then really kind of leave out our boundaries. We become foot soldiers, we become boundaryless, and we say, yeah, I mean, this is not something that I can do alone. Unless I collaborate, this cannot get solved, and therefore I need to collaborate. So if we go with these two kind of approaches, I think collaboration become easier. Now, of course, there will be organizational context. You might be an academicians but wanting to collaborate with a corporate, and things, there will be operational, there will be systems, frameworks, and all that stuff. But if you have made up your mind that we have a meeting of minds, so called, it should not be difficult. Yeah. So that would be my thoughts.
Yeah, I like that it's important that you mentioned about the competition, because I do think that that's the mindset that we're in. I don't think it's just a mindset that we're in India because it's such a competitive culture that we have even at the high school level, just getting into a school. But beyond that, we are a kind of a competitive world, and I really think that mindset has to be turned away towards collaboration to start. I think that's wonderful advice you give, Nimish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I'll see you off for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Jakob, how about you? What advice would you give the people in our audience?
Well, I think it comes down to like the first word that that was there on your homepage when you launched it during COVID. The word listening. So I think a lot of our of the places where we go wrong is because we don't follow the basic advice of how to organize work that involves more people, and that basic advice is ask them. Just if you want to engage in an area that involves someone other than yourself, then ask. What does that problem that I want to work on, how does that relate to your life? What is climate change? Why is it that, why are you flooding your rice? For example, you will probably learn a lot from asking that question, and that will also put you in a dialogue and in a conversation, and you will have a much better scientific question or a much better question to be answered from your agri startup, and you probably already have a community for the technology that you are coming out with in the end, or from the protocol change or the new rice variety or whatever it is that you're working on. Yeah. So ask them.
And Tina Petrau, who's our head of engagement, she gave me this expression. I hope she's okay with this, because it's a beautiful expression about listening that I actually consciously think of whenever I do try to practice listening is, are you then, when you ask that question, are you listening to understand? Or are you listening to respond to what that person's saying? Because only when you're listening to understand them are you actually listening. Because otherwise, then you're just hearing enough so that you can then say what you think, right? So I think that it's a real skill. And so I think practicing active listening to understand without trying to think, okay, how can I answer this question, is really the key to starting a good collaboration. Thank you for mentioning that, Jakob. That's absolutely essential to this process. It's why we're called the Echo Network. Echo listens and gives back after listening, and that's why we're called that. A lot of people think we're the Eco Network. We are that too, but we really are first and foremost a pathway of listening and giving back. So Marcella, what about you? Please unmute yourself.
As we are such a rich diversity, and I would say there are so many viewing points for the same issues. And what I get encouraged is, there are so many areas of strengths that we have among us. And I'm talking about not just the few of us over here, or maybe those in the network, but even those beyond. And I think here, each of us looking at this common problem of sustainability of our humankind for tomorrow within our earth and its resources. I think there's a lot of different areas of strengths along where we need to come together as partners, respecting each one from a partnership of bringing in different perspectives and views and strengths and insights and knowledge and skills and capacities that it is in this partnership together, it's like fitting in the different bits of the jigsaw puzzle. And that as many of us are here, we have our contribution towards this. And I think it is only in this sort of a partnership that we can work together towards a sustainable tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Marcella. I agree with you. Everyone talks about partnerships, right? Actually, I don't think anyone's not talking about collaboration, actually. I think it's a word on everybody's lips, but I think people don't realize how much effort, what actually it means to collaborate, right? It means all of the things that you just mentioned. It also means the humility that Namish mentioned, that not becoming competitive, not listening to see how can we do it better. It also requires the listening that Jakob mentioned. It's a really difficult job, but I think most of us think we just throw a bunch of people in a room and then they'll collaborate. And it's so much more than that. If you really, really want to build that trust and that relationship and that community that needs to happen. So so really, I appreciate all of you being with us through this process. And I also want to reach out to Neha, who's been on this call, who we're bringing in just a minute. And I'd like to know, Neha, do you have any advice? I mean, this is something that you practice both as an individual and also throughout your entire career is about how to work together and collaborate. What advice would you give?
I mean, you just got to ride the cycle. I think that the problems that we're trying to solve are so big. I mean, the whole basis of this entire conversation is that we can't solve these problems alone. That really is just the starting point. Solving these problems needs all of us chipping in, all of us being our most innovative or most efficient, which means not reinventing the wheel, not stepping on each other's toes, and also pushing each other to do better, which I think collaboration lets us do. So it's just, I feel like there is no other option. You just have to do it. And that is the moment you accept that, you end up collaborating. And I feel like the perks are so worth it, because not only are you then, of course, making a better attempt at solving big issues, but it really pushes you to do better, think better, because there are just that many more people in that soup of thought prompting new action. So, yeah.
And one of the things that you do so very well is also sharing stories, right? It's also very important to share your journey with others, right? And that's an important part of collaboration, is also sharing that experience, because that's how we actually build from each other. So it's really important to also not only to listen, but also to share. And that's something that you do incredibly well. I also brought you in because we have one question in the audience that I also think you might be able to answer as well, or you might have some idea on. It's actually a pretty specific question about data and digitization, which I'm glad that Prabhu brought up, because it's actually not something that we've talked heavily about, but is also an issue that I brought up during my talk about the digital divide. I mean, how do we see that changing, and especially in sort of eco-biodiversity, right? Biodiversity is an issue that everyone on this call right now deals with. It's my specialty in terms of my science, but I mean, it's also an issue that we all deal with. And the digital aspect of this, we're also on a digital platform right now. I mean, that's really changing rapidly. I don't know. It's a really open question to any of you if you're interested in to address it. How do you see that changing as we go forward in this year, but also in the coming years?
Marcella, do you want to?
But
you're muted.
I think, when I think of it, and I think of the type of work we do and the data that we need, we always wish we had more data. We had more information and we can't collect all the data at the same time. And there is an urgent need, I would say, we all need, to collect the data. How do we get, I don't know. How do we get to share? How do we put it in a common platform? Or how do we communicate this? But we feel there's an urgent need for this. So what we do is we go around to see who has the data, what type of data. Then we need to find out mechanisms in which we can access the data, and keep it. And the second part is, I'm just going to put this out because it strikes me so much. We have so many academic institutes across the globe. There's so much of data collected out there. I don't know whether all that data in any institute is sort of brought into a kind of a library, or probably we need to generate a different type where the data is brought in, of the different aspects that can later be put to use. But I think a lot of data sits down there in minds that are not yet explored, and just getting more and more under the rubble. These are the minds I think we need to explore.
Sorry, but it also points back to collaboration, right? Like it's basically there's so much data being generated and there has to be collaboration to share the data. And also then if you're actually looking at implementation from the data on the ground, that's also where you need collaboration. Like just speaking from Sustain's perspective, when we are documenting India's wildlife and habitats and then creating content around it for awareness, we then for implementation want to partner with organizations that are already on the ground. There is no point in me going out and then again building boots on the ground when so many people are already doing that in such a fantastic way. What we need are those channels of communication. But I also think that to an extent, if we just talk about the specific point that Marcella raised about the kind of studies and data being generated by academic institutions and research institutions and sharing that, I think that Shannon's little surprise right now in her launch is also an answer to that, or an attempt at an answer to that, a beginning to that answer. So you want to take that, Shannon?
Yeah, and thank you. That's a perfect segue to this the big surprise. The reason why we kept you all on the line for this long. I just do want to mention also from the perspective, one of the biggest issues, and I can say this as a scientist who creates data all the time, right? There's a lot of mistrust across organizations about sharing their data. There's a lot of fear about how is your data going to be shared? How is it going to be used? Who is going to use it? Why are they going to use it? And that is a big limiting factor. So there's actually lots of platforms available where, people say, please give your data to us. But there's not the trust building and the shared values. And so people they're like, why should I give you my data, right? So that's why you can't just create these repositories and expect the data to come and then to be implemented, even though, as Marcella says, it's desperately needed for us to bring data together. But you have to create these collaborations first so that you have the trust behind them so that people understand why am I giving the data? And they also understand what they're going to get out of the data sharing process, right? Without that sort of dialogue beforehand, I think that is a big limitation we have to our digital spaces right now, because they're not built from a framework of trust. They're just built from, like I said, if we build it, they will come. And that doesn't really work in reality. You really have to do the background work. Yeah, so that really brings me to the surprise, the gift we have for everyone. And it also, I want to lead going back to Neha's question. It is actually amazingly, it's a great question you asked, because it's a digital platform that we're going to present to you, but it's a digital platform created from the perspective of building trust and collaboration first. So that's why we're releasing it now after 4 years instead of actually at the beginning of the process. And Neha, maybe, because it's actually being hosted by Round Glass Sustain, and it's coming from the Round Glass Collective's design, maybe tell us a little bit about why you were interested in working with the Echo Network. I mean, you were one of our founding partners, number one, but I mean, this wasn't your job to do. So this was something that you agreed to do, a couple of years into the process. So maybe tell us why you decided to do this.
Honestly, it's about collaboration again. I think that with Rangla Sustain, when we started doing this documentation of India's wildlife, of its habitats, telling these stories, we realized the same things that actually Jakob mentioned earlier, right? That number one, an issue in India is no longer just an issue in India, it's a global issue.
it matters to everybody. And also that knowledge sharing is so important because there are unique solutions that are coming up that can be like helpful to everybody. And we need to be making the most of the resources we have instead of just like stepping on each other's toes and reinventing the wheel. So we've been very collaborative from the start. We've worked with academia to take their science, make it accessible. We've worked with conservation organizations. So this whole ethos of collaboration has been something that's been central to sustain. And, the suspicion was a part of it, right? Letting go of ownership was a part of it because as content creators, we also came with very traditional notions of copyright, ownership to the material we were creating and letting go of all of that. So I think that when we then heard about the Echo Network, that sort of symbiotic fit was there, right? Because that's exactly what you were also trying to do, bring this sort of cross-functional thinking so that people can collaborate, exchange knowledge and information. And then creating a platform for it together just made perfect sense to have this space where people can safely come together, share the kind of knowledge they have, put it out there for each other, interact, ask questions. It was a perfect fit.
Thank you, Neha. And we are so honored and proud to work with Roundglass on this. So without further ado, we are going to give you our gift, which is actually the global launch of our platform. We have launched it internally. We've launched it with a small group of people first. We've launched it with our network, but now we're opening it up to the world so you can be part of this digital space that we've created from a purpose, a point of trust, from a point of collaboration. And I'm going to start with the launch. And Neha, since your audio is still on, you need to tell me if you can't hear this, okay? Because I realized I didn't test the sound before, so I hope this works. So let me know as soon as possible if it's not working. So I am sharing the audio, so let's hope it works. Here we go. Can you hear it?
No, can't hear anything.
Nope. Is the sound not working?
No, not hearing anything. I can see your screen. Play it
Yeah.
again. It's not playing right now. Just play it.
Okay.
Now we can.
Do you want to lead a more sustainable life, but don't know where to start, who to trust, or what to believe?
Oh, we could hear it and see it, but it was stopped suddenly.
Oh, okay. I will share it again. I apologize. Apologies for the technical difficulty. I will take responsibility for not testing it beforehand, which no good scientist should ever do, but I did anyways. Okay, then it should hear it now. Yes?
Yes, we can hear it.
Do you want to lead a more sustainable life, but don't know where to start, who to trust, or what to believe? You're not alone. Thousands of us are raising our voices for a better future for our planet. The OCAS experiment is a digital space where you can gather, share knowledge, and discuss ways to sustain our planet Earth. We are a trusted community you can join to build your sustainability narrative. So, are you ready to tell us your story? Sign up on the OCAS experiment platform and let's get started. Start at the Discover page and find your fight. Take this short quiz to understand what drives you. Find trusted connections from across the world on our community page who are experts in current sustainability issues. Connect, listen, collaborate. Wondering what to believe in? Dive into our Explore channel and get inspired by verified resources handpicked by our experts, especially for you. Once you have explored our platform's unique features, come to the Conversations page to raise questions and find answers with others who are on the same journey to a more sustainable life. Join the OCAS experiment and be part of the sustainability revolution our world needs now. Spread the word and let's start our sustainability journey together today.
Yeah, so welcome everyone to our platform. This is supposed to be our digital space, right? This is a space where people across the world can come together and meet the people in our network, find out the resources and the information they have, and actually ask questions and hopefully get answers from a trusted group of people. And also, you can participate in our events through our platform. The website is very simple. It's actually just OCAS. OCAS is a Sanskrit word, and it means home and community. And it's the same cognate as ecos, which is where the word ecology comes from. So that's why we call it the OCAS experiment. So it's ocas.live. And Akshata's here, our head of research, to tell us a little bit about how to get the platform to work, because the video was really fast. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Akshata, to explain a little bit about the network, the platform.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm just going to quickly start my screen share and let me know when you see it. Just give me a second. Oops. Yeah. Can you see it now? Do you see my screen?
Yes, now we see it.
All right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the OCAS experiment. We are so excited to have you all here with us so we can officially virtually launch our platform. And as Shannon just mentioned, OCAS is a Sanskrit word which means home, and it perfectly describes what we are offering you through this platform: a home for our network, a home where we debate, discuss, inquire, make connections, and inspire people, therefore enabling them to make informed decisions. In the network, we focus on 4 main areas of study, which is ecosystems valuation, regenerative agriculture, One Health, and circular bioeconomy. And that is how you will see that the entire platform is organized under. So let's begin with a very quick and easy sign-up process, which is essential if you want full access to the platform, access to reading resources, experts and practitioners, podcasts and discussions on the 4 topics, and much, much more. So you first need to sign up here by entering your name, an email ID. That's just a test email ID. A password. And just approve of these. Yeah, and then click on the sign up button here. And with that, you'll also need to add in a little bit more information about yourself, and this will help us set up your basic profile, right? So let's say add in your full name there. The name of your organization. Echo. Sorry, not. Yeah, the sector, let's say it's academia for now. City, Bangalore, country, you can type in India. Oops. There you go. State, Karnataka. And contact number, that's optional. So if you want to provide, you can do that, or we can skip this for now. And also a little bit more information about your areas of interest, about your organization. And this again will help build your basic profile, right? So you can click all that apply. So for now, I'm just going to, let's say, click on these 2 options. These are the regions of interest that I'm interested in. The topics of interest, let's say ecology, communication, climate action. You can also select all of the above. and which are the focus areas that you most resonate with. Let's say all of the above. Okay, and you can go a step further again. You can type in a little bit about your core areas of expertise and skills, and also what's your organization. So if you're coming from an organization, or even if you're coming as an individual, as a freelancer, right, what is it that you can offer to the community? So let's say, for example, your organization works very closely with communities, right? So probably you have access to field sites or communities, lab equipments, softwares, databases, etc. Right? We have a lot more other options here. So you click on those and let's say continue. Right? Click on I agree, submit, and with that, you become a member of the platform. So before we start, we click on this little icon here at the top right-hand corner to add more information about yourself, your work, and your interests. And this makes it easy for people to connect with you. Okay, as you can see, the information that you provided during the sign-up process has automatically filled in here to create a basic profile. But you can, of course, add in a lot more information. You can add your profile image here. You can write a little bit about yourself. You can add your websites, publications, basically whatever you'd want to share with the people on the platform here. Okay, so, all right. Let's start exploring. Now that we are here, now that you've created your account, you will first land on the Discover page where you can take a short quiz called Find Your Fight, right? And this quiz is a very short quiz which will basically help us get a rough understanding of the topic that you are most interested in, okay? And at the end of the quiz, it has about 3 to 4 questions. And at the end of the quiz, you will be able to take, the quiz will take you automatically to that particular topic that you're interested in. But of course, you can explore more on the other topics too. This is just to give you an initial head start. So going back to the Discover page, right? So if you scroll down once you've taken the quiz, let's say you want to learn a little bit more about the topic of One Health. So we click on the One Health tab here, and alternatively, you can also navigate through the other topics through this drop-down list of menu that we have here. So this page here, the One Health page here, you will find all the resources related to One Health that have been carefully collated and curated from our network members. You can see the people here from our network who are working on the field. You can click on their profiles to learn a little bit more about them. Right? So you can see a little bit about their profiles here, where they're working on, their bios, their specialities, area of interests, and all of that. And we also have a list of resources here, all related to One Health. Okay, so if you want to learn a little bit more about One Health, let's say you want to read about this particular resource, you click on that particular resource and it takes you to the page where there's a small summary about that particular resource. There's also an external link. If you click here, it takes you to that website. So you can explore more about that. And we also make it a point to mention who this particular resource article has been contributed by. Mostly it is from our network members, right? So that's the resources there. And here. So let's go back to the page on One Health again. So if you want to, again, discover connections here, get inspired with us by reading a lot of articles and papers. But if you just want to read about everything under One Health, right? So you click on the reading option here. That takes you to a list of all the articles that are there under One Health. Okay, and if you want to watch and learn through videos, right, you can click on the watch link here, and we have a bunch of videos here that are contributed by our various organizations. We have panel discussions here that is taking place in at the network, right? And if you want to listen to certain podcasts, you can click on this on the multimedia section here, and you can listen to a bunch of podcasts here that is there from our network related to One Health. And you can use the Share tab here to share any articles, websites, any resources that you find is important and we should know about them, and you want to share it with our platform members. You can use this Share tab here to either upload a file or upload an entire folder as well, right? And so basically, this is the format here for all of the other topics as well, all of the other areas of interest too. Okay, so apart from this, if you want to say, if you want to just explore all the other articles not related to, let's say, One Health or regenerative agriculture, you want to learn, let's say, read all of the articles that are there on the platform. So you can use this tab here, the Explore option, where you can read a lot of articles here. You can also use the filter option that we have here to browse through the topic of interest, to browse through focus areas. You can also use the keywords here. We have a list of keywords and select any of these keywords here. The type of content, maybe you're only interested to look at reports or, let's say, policy briefs. So you can use the filter option here to make it easier for you to search for articles. And alternatively, you can also directly click on the search button here. And let's say you want to look for a particular topic, let's say communities of practice, because that's what we've been speaking about, right? And you get a bunch of options here. And you can click on an article and read about it. Okay. All right. So moving on to the communities page. Here at the communities page, you will find all the people who have joined our platform from our network that are there on this platform. And similarly, even for the communities page, you can use the filter options to look for people based on their specialities and their interests. And this is why at the sign up process, it's very important to sort of put in the correct specialities and interests so that, people can find you in the right categories. Right? And if you want to connect with anybody here, you'll have to contact Tina and she'll help you and take that process forward. We also have the conversations page. And here is where you will find everything that is buzzing at the network. You can use the space to post about articles that you have written or that you want us to read. If there are any workshops or webinars that's happening, basically we use the space to reach out and connect with our network members. Right? You can like a post, you can interact with the person who has posted it by liking it. Use the comment section here. Use the comment section here to drop in your comments and feedback. Right? And last but not the least, we also have the events page. So the events page, you will find, we'll keep posting about upcoming events that we are doing at the Echo Network. Like you can see, this one is posted here. And through this link, you can directly join and register for these events as well. And so with that, last but not the least, I'd also like to show you the notifications button here. Since I've just signed up, you wouldn't see anything, but once you sign up and once we've added new resources, events, articles here, you will find it on the notification section here. Right? And so with that, we welcome you to join our home, the AUKUS experiment, where the aim is to find people, literature, multimedia, and events about regenerative agriculture, One Health, ecosystems valuation, and circular bioeconomy all in one place. So thank you so much and welcome.
So much, Akshata. Yeah, so this is open to all of you. I saw in the chat, Shavita had this question about how 9 through 12 science education can intersect. Well, this is one place to start. We have lots of resources on here and these are all handpicked. These all come from our network members, people that we trust, that we know when they give us a resource that it's coming from a place of knowledge and a place of expertise. So these are handpicked for you. So you could use these, for example, to share with your students, to share in a classroom, to teach them about current issues and sustainability. We're constantly updating this. You can also reach out to us on this platform, for example, and ask us. And ask this question: are there any initiatives out there for students that are happening right now? And that will alert the rest of our network to post. There's actually a lot of things happening for students all over the country constantly in this where young people can actively participate. There's many initiatives happening. If you want a specific answer, Shavita, please reach out to us, to the Echo Network. You can connect to us on our website. It's echonetwork.in, and we can then reach out to you directly to connect you with specific initiatives. But you can also get started through this platform. And we are almost out of time. So with that, I do want to thank our speakers, thank Nimish, thank Jakob, Marcella, and Neha. Thank you for being with us, not just today, but through this entire process. And also thank you for your support. And thank you for continuing the journey with us. And let's hope that we bring some of the audience members into the fold and learn from them as well. And everyone out there, I hope that no matter what you do, whether you join the OCAS experiment, the Echo Network, whatever journey that you take, that you listen more, you collaborate more, you open your heart, you open your mind, and you think about new ways to work with others, because that's what we need in order to make the sustainability journey actually a reality for everyone on this planet. Thank you to everyone, and I will close this the way I do my podcast. Thank you so much. Keep dreaming. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.